So one thing I wanted to ask Leo is regarding the knee. You traveled the world, you've been around pro athletes, novice athletes. Is there a commonality among all these athletes and demographics that you've seen regarding knee stability and issues with the knee complex, anything like that?
I mentioned earlier about we want to keep the knee in line with the foot. And I think that's one of the things you're going to be talking about with. So I'm really glad, because what I've seen very, very often, okay, either we get as they're squatting, the knees bowing out, but even more commonly, we see this, okay? And we want the knees to stay in line with the toes. So how do we work on that? What's causing that, and how do we fix that from a coaching standpoint?
Right.
Because I see that at a lot of levels.
Yeah, for sure. I think going valgus, you know, like you said, is really common, where the knees start coming in.
Right.
I don't know if that could be a motor control issue. That's one thing I would look at is, you know, does the person even know that their knees are going in? And once they start being trained to activate their abductors to get the knees out a little bit more, they might need a little bit more firing. We're talking about the glutes. Sometimes that can actually stem from overactive adductors, or the inside of the thigh. So similar to what we were talking about with overactive hip flexors in the front, and then the back side of the body not being able to elongate and act like that elastic band with power. Same thing can be said with opposite sides of the leg or the hip, where if we have overactive adductors on the inside, maybe the adductors over here can't really fire that well because they're just being drawn in all the time. So that's one thing I would look at, is, you know, making sure that the athlete is aware of that firing pattern. The next thing, that if it was deemed that the adductors on the inside of the thigh are overactive, I would start looking at self-myofascial release and mobility that they can do anywhere, anytime, because it's so easy to do. And we're actually going to go into that with you. And then regarding the knee, you know, as far as tracking, do you find that whether it be PTs or whatever else, that they're talking about how the patella or the kneecap glides in the femoral groove? Have you heard that?
No, haven't heard anything on that. No.
Okay. So sometimes what can happen is there's 4 quadriceps muscles, and they all come down and they converge right here at the knee. And there's this common quadriceps tendon that goes over the kneecap or patella, and it inserts right here into the ischiotuberosity, which allows us, when the quadriceps shorten, it allows us to go into knee extension, okay? But if there's a possibility that the adductors can definitely have a bearing on this, for sure, because they're all connected, right? So it's not like quadriceps are alone and adductors are alone, they're all together, okay? And if we start looking at self-myofascial release and mobility in all of these tissues, it's going to be really important that they slide and glide over one another in a multiplanar format. So the fascia, the muscles, and then the adjacent muscles and the adjacent fascia, they can all glide freely over one another, so then the body can basically do what it was meant to do. So let's take, for example, if someone is overactive, really overactive in the quadriceps, then that can actually place a lot of tension in the common quadriceps tendon, which is then possibly going to put a lot of tension on the patella or the kneecap, and that can actually potentially cause some issues with gliding with the patella inside the femoral groove, and some people might actually get some discomfort there as a result. So that's why looking at from the iliopsoas, TFL, keep going, don't stop there, right? Because tissues above and below the problem area can have a direct effect on our results in power and speed and performance. So right now what we're going to do is we're going to take Leo through a little mobility and self-myofascial release thing that you can do every single day, anywhere, anytime. We're going to focus a little bit on the adductors on the inside of the thigh, and we're also going to look at the quadriceps.
Now, I can't wait for him to take me through this, but just a real quick note. This guy's really smart on the anatomy. He's bringing up all these terms. You don't have to remember all those terms, but we're just explaining this so that you have an idea of, you always have a reason why you do things, okay? Or why something's not working, or what you need, what are the reasons behind that. So the anatomy is giving you that background. You don't have to memorize everything, but at least understand the concepts to make all this stuff work. And if you can understand the concepts, why it works, then you'll have a more tendency to actually want to do the stuff.
Awesome point. Thank you for that.
You got it.
All right, so how are we going to perform self-myofascial release and mobilize the infamous quadriceps muscle? We're going to bring in the RAD HELIX, one of my favorite tools. This guy is awesome at hitting the back as well. It's our spinal recess right here, but any bone, tibia, shin splints and all that can go in here. But what we're gonna do is use it as a traditional foam roller and use it on our quads, okay? So can you get into a lying position on your belly? And what you're gonna do is place the RAD HELIX right in the center of your quadriceps muscle. Bring this leg way out here. His left knee is coming way out to create that large base of support, so there's not too much pressure coming down on his quads. Notice he's also got a great body position. He's got a neutral spine here, and he's got his elbows right below his shoulders, which is a fabulous biomechanics here. Right now he's scanning, so he's finding that number 5, maybe just going up and down a couple inches. Once he finds that number 5, I want you to stop on there and take those 10 deep breaths. Calm down those tissues. Really get the diaphragm and the ribs involved as well in that breathing. Notice his hands are relaxed. He's not going white knuckle there. Everything looks really relaxed on him. He's doing great. So after getting the quadriceps muscle to relax a little bit, it's a great time, especially in a warm-up, to really add a little bit of mobility in there now before a workout. So I'm gonna ask you to start shearing side to side, nice and slow. Now remember, when you shear, it's almost like you're taking your skin and moving it side to side. So if this were his quadricep muscle, the quads run longitudinally up and down, and all he's doing is taking his quads and skin and moving it side to side. And once you move it side to side, Leo, whatever side your skin or tissues don't really want to go, whichever one feels more restricted, he's gonna keep that shear in place, and then you're gonna bend your knee just a little bit. Now what he's doing is he's pinning that top layer, he slid it over to the side, and now he's moving his quadricep muscles below it. So he's really forcing a lot of sliding glide in the fascial system, muscular system, the skin, adipose tissue, everything. So how did that feel?
I just finished squatting heavy 2 days ago, so my quads are a little bit tight. That felt awesome. A little bit painful, but I had to back it off a little bit. But I noticed that every time I did a little bit of flexion at the knee, each flexion got a little bit more comfortable, and a little bit higher each time. The heel came up a little bit higher. So I think this would be wonderful for weightlifters in particular, because we use our legs so much. That's a great way to ease off those quads.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
All right, now we're gonna go to our active mobility technique for the quadriceps. So it's gonna be a little bit of a passive but active mobility technique. I thought this would be good because you can do it anywhere, anytime. All you need is a wall. If you have good enough balance, you don't even need a wall, right? So can you place your hand on the wall, and we're gonna stretch your right quadriceps there. And I think a lot of people are familiar with this, where you grab your ankle, not necessarily your foot, so you don't place a lot of tension on your ankle complex. And that right there is essentially elongating the quadriceps, but let's add a little bit more spice to it and get a little bit more brain activity, nervous system activity, and a little bit of posterior chain activation. So can you contract your right glute and thereby draw this knee back further? And do you feel a difference there? Oh yeah, it moves the stretch from the middle of the quad down to the lower quad. Okay, for me. Okay. I know for me, when I do it, I also feel quite a bit more elongation right here in the top of the where the rectus comes up. Yeah. Maybe I'm just really tight there. Well, everybody's gonna be tighter in different spots. Yeah, for sure. But I do this stretch a lot. I think that's why I'm pretty good at it. Yeah, that makes sense. But yeah, just actually getting him to actively contract that glute. Like we said, the body always works in opposition. So if he's contracting one side, it's going to automatically help relax the other side. And that's going to help you get a little bit more of a stretch, a little bit more elongation out of those quadriceps.